Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
You are watching a Fact TV presentation of the Rockingham School Board meeting.
It's 5:30, so I'll call the Rockingham School Board meeting to order. We have a quorum. We have Chris Gibby, Jim McCullough, Bill Morris is on Zoom. I don't see Caitlin yet. I think he's going to on my Zoom, so he probably can join us. Let's have the pledge of allegiance.
Priscilla, just before we start that, I have been getting kicked off this a few times,
Okay,
so it's not stopping the meeting, but it's stopping my interaction with the board.
okay,
So just letting everyone know.
okay, sounds good, and we have the quorum in the room,
Yeah,
so we're
yeah.
okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
I didn't have any. And Caitlin, actually,
Next meeting is, we'll see.
Section 8, yeah, when we get to 8, we may end up having some of that postponed it because it's a really long agenda, but we'll see how far. Yeah, and
I did
try to
email,
limit.
Nicole on Friday. She was out just to add a donation to next to Laura's there for the same cause.
Where's
Saxon's
that?
River's already under there.
SRES,
Yeah,
advertised
so
in
little
the,
charities, I have one for BFMS.
and you have it,
Seven B.
well, okay, so we'll add BFMS also.
thank you.
And how about Central? Do we have one for Central?
I'm sorry.
Did you get a donation from River Charities?
No,
Not
Okay.
yet.
Not yet, all right,
should we?
Okay.
typically.
Probably will, because.
We'll take it if we do.
But, we'll put those two on for this
Okay.
time. Okay, communication and public comment. Is anybody in the room? Okay, review and approve the board minutes of October 2 and October 16. October 2, are there any corrections?
I'll move approval.
Okay, so we'll approve those as written. October 16th, any corrections?
I'll move approval.
Okay, and we'll approve those as written. Finance report, Jim,
All right, we'll have a final.
short and form if possible.
Short and And I will,
Because the next meeting will be budget.
yes, I'm just passing this out, just, this is a work in progress. And I just, as we converted over from e-finance, we're still in the process and, so the only thing that I just want to quickly go through this. So on page 1, you'll see where on the left-hand side, there's a circle. And there's a circle around the 31 and 11. And this is where that I like to say 85-digit code, every digit is a critical piece. And that 31 is not a middle school code, it's a 51. So that has to be corrected. And Erica, I gave her a listing of the account codes that had to be touched up and move forward. On page 2, you'll see 3/4 of the way down, there's an $815,000. That shouldn't be in there, and I've asked the accounting people to remove that line because that's your surplus. And again, it was there the last report, but they haven't moved it as yet, but that shouldn't appear on there. The only reason I say it shouldn't, because when we add everything in, it gives you a false, bottom line there. You're 815,000 too much.
That's the surface we got for the SU.
Yes, yes. So, I just on guidance on page 4. And we made this correction, today, so. Laura doesn't have a guidance counselor, correct?
Correct.
But Carrie does. Now, I just want to say, if you'll notice on Carrie's, which is the second line down, the 104 on, everybody find that? Okay, so you'll notice there's nothing encumbered, and you're saying, well, what the heck's going on? But what happened was that teacher was coded incorrectly, went into your regular ed. So you were high on the regular ed, and we've since moved it. But we are going through all of these to make sure everything is in alignment. The good thing I will say, this is the last year that you'll have to go through that, because next year, the positions are set and locked and loaded. And now anybody coming in, they'll have to have what position are they coming into in order to get into the system. And we've always had a tough time keeping track of who's in where, but it'll flow once we're there. So, I think you're reasonably okay. I mean, I went through, all of this, and I'm just gonna hand out the revenue side as well. And there's, the revenue side is very little revenue. You get the grant money, you get the state, property taxes, and the only thing that I'm kind of a little bit concerned with, and that is our middle school tuition. And we may be a little bit light. And I will say this, probably next year, it's all right with our superintendent, but I'd like to kind of make sure we're in a comfortable lower position. I just want to make sure that the revenue in the budget piece, we can hit it. So, any quick questions that I can give to you?
I would assume if you look at page 13, the budget balance of $2,395,000 ought to be reduced by $815,000.
That's correct. That is correct. But I think it'll flow very well, and I wish we could set it up a little differently to give you a little more space between, and we'll be working on that just to see what we can bring forward.
Any other questions? I think this is a lot of information in preparation for the budget meeting on the
Sure,
next,
absolutely.
on the
Yep.
third Monday.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. Principals informational report. We started last time. So, Carrie, I'll start with you.
Sure, just a few share outs. So I just want to say thank you to the staff, students and parents and everybody for their parent conferences this week. So we started last Friday and then we had them today again. And so we had a good chunk of our families in. We appreciate that. So just giving updates on how things students are doing. It's not an actual report card conference right now because that's not until January. This is just a student update and we were able to give out the MAPS data, the DIBELS data, the USNS, and for the number sense data. So it was nice to meet with families. And then we also gave a little pamphlet about yardsticks and milestones of how students should be doing, typically developing peers and things like that too. So it was great to see families. And just want to give a shout out for this Friday is Veterans Day, so thank you to all veterans, and we do have a no school day on the 11th, so just remember that for Friday, and then,
No school day on the 10th.
sorry, the 10th, sorry, Veterans Day is the 11th. but we're
Pardon me, I
celebrating the 10th.
apologize, I just
Yep,
didn't
no,
know.
I'm glad you did that, so thank you, yes, it's always 11/11, but yes, we're celebrating on the 10th, thank you. And then thank you, everybody. We started our donations for our place, and so we set a goal. We are trying to surpass our goal from last year. So we set our goal of 500 donations between canned goods, boxed items, toiletries to donate. And we will continue until the 17th, in which day we will bring the items over and walk the students over to our place. So we hope everybody can participate in that and thank those that already have and continue on with our donations for that. So any questions or comments?
Any questions for Carrie?
Okay.
If not, thank you, Carrie. Appreciate that. Laura?
Sure, parent-teacher conferences, as Carrie mentioned, as of right now, we have 88.5% of our families attended a conference, and we're still hoping for 100%. So we have a few left that have been rescheduled, and then a couple of families we are continuing to reach out to share information about their student. On the 9th, we will have 2 members of the American Legion Auxiliary come to school and meet with students. And in honor of Veterans Day, and our students are preparing cards and posters to honor those who served their country. Our 4th graders, again, will be experiencing the wonder of free to read and receiving a homemade book bag filled with books. Alec Hadamatori will present, and the Rotary Club sponsors that, which is turning into an annual event, which is quite lovely. The Montshire Museum is coming to share their Star Lab, and just an ILT update. We continue to work at our last half building-based day. We developed a 1-pager for our current focus. That includes what the environment should look like, what students are doing, what teachers are doing, links. And we hope to also develop, that's for our staff, and we hope to also develop one for families so that they have the same information, but at a family level. Any questions that you might have?
Any questions for Laura?
I like that. What you just said.
Yeah, and the costumes were so impressive for Halloween. They were absolutely impressive. So just share and know that we saw those and thought it was wonderful. Henry, you're up.
All right, thank you. Yeah, like everybody else, I want to thank the parents for coming out. We had our second day of conferences today. A lot of parents showed up to support their students and also our teachers, and we have many more that are actually still scheduled throughout the course of this week and next week during team time. So it'll be good to see those parents, and we appreciate the support there for sure. Friday night was our PTO glow dance. We had 114 students that attended, and the PTO raised just over $500. It's great to see all the kids show up in a different element than the academic setting and kind of spend the night together. And again, 114 students, which is about half the population, so it's a pretty good turnout for a Friday night. So we appreciate that, and we appreciate the PTO for what they do to support all students here at BFMS. On the 9th, we have Taysa Lynch from Turning Point Recovery Center in Springfield. She's going to be visiting the middle school and talking with all students in grades 6 through 8 in Middle Lake Hour Assembly. She's going to share the story of her upbringing and how trauma led to self-medication and how her addiction affected everyone she loved, how she found recovery, and how she currently shares with her family and all those around her. She is a certified recovery coach, a certified addiction counselor, and a certified prevention specialist. So Turning Point is an organization, free organization through the state that we kind of paired with last year with not having an SAP for our school. So Taysa founded this recovery center in Springfield, and she's been great to work with, and she's helped a lot of students with tough times that they're facing in their lives of their own. So we're looking forward to that. On the 17th, we have our next BFMS. Well, this is our first one technically, but it kind of spins off of Unity Day, which is a full day. BFMS Exploration Day. So on Friday the 17th, which is the last day of school for kids before they have that whole week off for Thanksgiving, We're gonna follow an early release schedule and we'll have the afternoon for exploration activities. There'll be a variety of activities, different activities offered by the staff. Students will learn quilting, how to make jewelry, how to make cookies, how to play chess. They'll make gnomes and homes near the river. We're gonna take them on a hike. Some students will learn how to play basketball and a bunch of other different fun learning activities. Kind of to focus on community, to bring staff and students together. Students will have the opportunity to see staff members maybe that they don't see anymore. If they're like a 7th or 8th grader, they could take some kind of activity with like a 5th or 6th grade teacher if they wanted to. So we're really looking forward to that. And again, that'll be on the 17th. And then one more thing I promised our girls field hockey team, because it's been a while. Fall sports wrapped up last week, and our 7 and 8 girls field hockey team went undefeated at 12-0. So I promised them I'd point that out. So congratulations to those girls.
Any questions for Henry? Also, I wanted to mention to all of you that the open houses were absolutely wonderful to see, the astounding classrooms and all the stuff that was up and all the wonderful positiveness that came across from all the staff and the people in your buildings. So, Chris.
I just had a comment. Happened to be in on a conversation the other day. It's dad in town, and his child had been recognized at the middle school, and he was just so proud of that child, and it was so nice to hear how happy he was for his child and how much he appreciated the school. So
Thank you.
Nice to hear.
Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate the comments. Anyone else? Okay, if not, we have the data assessment presentation next from Deb. All right. Or we have the this.
Well, while we get, I think you probably want to share the Zoom.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now.
We can get started while Andy does that. I am happy to be here, and thanks for letting us have this time. I brought Carrie Pickering and Kelly Green with me from Central, who are interventionists, with the hope that we have a chance to take our data from a 30-mile high view down to the ground. So, there you go. Here we go. So our goals for this meeting anyway are to share our fall math and ELA data, our assessment results. We're also aiming to share some examples of student progress over time and to dig in and show you examples of the diagnostic data that we're using to gather information about our students in both math and literacy. I will say, we're going to move through each content and then we'll pause at the end for a moment of questions. So we'll talk all about ELA and then we'll take a pause and then we'll come back and talk all about math. And we are really focused this year on using our data to inform our instruction. So what we're sharing today is a picture of our overall schools, but our focus on in classrooms and in our use of our data in schools is really to be able to target exactly what kids need and tailor our instruction to that. So that's my hope, that we walk out of here today with a clear idea of that piece. So ELA, English Language Arts. We're going to start with NWA MAP, which stands for Measures of Academic Progress. And the first thing, I just want to go over each of these assessments and talk about what they measure. So MAP measures a combination of vocabulary, informational text reading, literary text reading, and it's a computer-based assessment. So when teachers get the results of a MAP assessment, those are the 3 areas they get information about their students. They do also get, I didn't put on here, they also get something called a Lexile score, which gives a score of the kind of a text that students are able to read. So that's another helpful piece that comes from that. Okay. So here is a report, and I gave you these bubbles are here for just this report, and then we'll go through and there will just be the straight data. But the top line is the percentage of students who met the expected growth between fall of last year and fall of this year. The bottom two bars are, so this is all the same kids. The bottom bar on the left is the students at Central last fall. So the percentage of students who met the benchmark in the fall of last year. And then the bar on the right are the percentage of students who met or did not meet the benchmark this fall. That makes sense to everybody? I said we're gonna wait, but are there questions about the data before we move on
Yeah.
to make sure we understand?
Well, I thought the red, orange, yellow, green and blue stood for something. I thought blue was passed strongly, green was passed.
Yeah.
Yellow was kind of almost, and then the final two
Yeah.
were failed the test. Or failed badly or whatever. But
The way to think about it, so you'll see the percentile key down at the bottom there. And what that's indicating, if this is a norm referenced assessment, which means nationally, many students take this assessment and they create a percentile ranking based on all of those students. So each student is compared to this national large number sample size, right? The blue are kids who scored above the 80th percentile. So of 100% of these this national group, large group of kids, 80% of them and above, that's considered blue. So they've exceeded the average, basically. The green is like 60 to 80%. 60th to 80th percentile, sorry. And so on, yellow, 41st to 60th percentile. And then what MAP does is they assess a level of risk associated with those percentile rankings. So it's really how our students did in comparison to this very large number of kids. And that's what a norm referenced assessment is considered. Does that help?
yeah, but it's still, it's still the, when you look at that bottom line, the bottom line, you went from a 55 to a 40. Okay, but yet your arrows there would seem to indicate that almost everybody in the orange, which has failed the test, met expectations. So that's where I struggle. I see the blue and the green, and we went from like 42 to 30% on that, and so that's what concerns me. It looks like we've lost ground. But these arrow things, I think they kind of confuse me, but.
The bubbles, you mean?
The bubbles.
Yeah, they're not pointing to anything. Don't pay
Oh,
any
they're not.
attention to what they're pointing to.
they were just.
They're just, that's
referencing the
what this
line.
means. That's what this section.
That's
this
a good,
section
that's a
means.
good, that's a good
Yeah, glad you-
clarification.
Okay.
glad you-
I mean, I thought, I'm trying to read it on the orange thing and they're saying.
So the pink bubbles, you could take that arrow away. The arrow is just pointing to that whole bar. Same with these arrows. So don't pay attention to what they're actually pointing to. But they're just saying that bar means this is the percentage of students. This bar is, I'm so glad you brought that up. It would be better off pointing to the green and the blue. Good catch.
So, Deb,
Yes.
what percentage would you say are at the achievement levels that we are wanting them to be?
So we're hoping for our students to be in the green or the blue category.
In the which?
Green or the blue category, so above 60th percentile in relation to all the students that take the assessment. But let's keep going so we can talk about the data as a whole and then we'll come back. So that was Central. This is Saxton's River, SRES is Saxton's River, all the students. Same thing, top is about their growth. So how much did they grow from last fall to this fall in comparison to all the other kids who take this assessment? Which is first through fourth, which is actually just second through fourth. So this is 3 grades because it does not count first graders, because kindergarten, we made a decision that it's not accurate or appropriate measure for kids when they first come into kindergarten. So our kindergartners will take this map in winter. So this is really 3 grades. And then fall of last year, and fall of this year. Same students.
Relatively. One of the cohorts has moved on to the middle school.
Same grades.
Yeah.
different.
Second to third, first to second,
Mhm.
second to third, third to fourth. Only those kids are represented here.
Mhm.
So same kids, but not all of your kids.
Yes.
Okay. The middle school. Fall, so 29% in the fall, shifted to 26% in the spring. And this is counting 6 through 8.
Is this fall to fall?
Yes,
Okay, not to spring.
not the spring, fall, last fall to this current fall.
Fall.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
And which week of school were these given?
these were given
Ours was about the third week of September.
Or just the second
late
week.
September.
Second week of
It's
school?
pretty close right as they come in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got all the, over the summer.
Right.
But that's, what we try to be consistent when you give norm tests, that you're giving them at the same time
Right.
but so you're looking at, again, those cohorts of, they were tested in the fall of 22, 23. We tested them again 1 year later, type of thing. So then you can go back and look at fall to spring or spring to spring too. So there's a couple different ways to cut this.
And there are many questions about this assessment. When we talk about this assessment with teachers, questions such as how hard are our kids trying? Because they're individually on a computer. Questions such as how much does a computer create a barrier to them? Are they guessing? So there's a lot of questions that come up in regard to this assessment. Go next one. So this last one, this is the 8th graders who went to 9th grade, which was a nice portrait of growth. So last year's 8th grade landing into 9th grade, knowing how many challenges that existed in the 8th grade year of last year. Says a lot. Also, some of these scores really make me start to think about age groups and who this kind of a test is appropriate for, or who this kind of a test, which ages we can really start to think it represents their knowledge. So that's the MAP assessment, where it tells us those 3 things. It's a computer-based. We're going to move to another assessment that we're using. Well, let's talk about how do we explain these scores. So I know they're not, they're still not what we want to see. And what MAP, this is a model that has been developed over decades. And it's a model of how our students learn to read, based on years and years of research, identifying all the areas that go into the complex process of reading. They've identified these 2 main areas: word recognition, you'll see at the bottom, which has to do with a kid's ability to lift the words off of a page. And they've identified all these other areas around comprehension, like knowledge and vocabulary and a kid's ability to take apart a very complex sentence. All of those pieces get packed into a kid's ability to read. And when we look at an assessment like MAP, we don't get to tease any of this out. We're looking at a score that has all of those processes mixed in together. We've moved, you can hit the next. We've moved to really digging in deeply to word recognition, because that same research has identified if kids can't lift words off of a page, they're not going to be able to address all the other skills. So we've started last year really, but this year full force in really identifying the areas of word recognition that our kids need in order to enable them to do all the other parts. Go ahead. So DIBELS, which we talked about last year, I'm going to show you a little example of the DIBELS assessment and what that looks like in comparison to the MAP assessment. DIBELS is a measure that is delivered one-on-one. So it's an interview-based assessment. There's no computer. Teachers sit one-on-one, our interventionists sit one-on-one with every single kid and administer this assessment. It measures all of those discrete skills, and 3 of them are portion of word recognition. So 3 of those individual skills are crucial to kids being able to take words off the page. Each of them gives us an individual score for those skills. Okay? So this is Central Elementary using the Dibbles assessment. This is one group of kids. This is our current 2nd grade students going back to kindergarten. So when they were when they took this assessment, and this is all of those individual skills that you just saw get put into one score. You can take them apart and see them individually, but you can also get a whole score. That's that cohort in kindergarten, then in 1st grade, and then in 2nd grade. And you'll notice their level of proficiency in this assessment is showing progress. That's encouraging. Okay. Same idea. This is now our current 3rd grade. 3rd grade students at the bottom, going back to that same group of kids in 2nd grade, back to 1st grade. Again, showing progress. Okay. And this is our 4th grade cohort. Traveling from 2nd, 3rd to 4th grade. These are, we don't have earlier scores because we first started administering this assessment in 2022, yeah. Right? And then once we've used Dibbles to identify those kids, that red band you saw represents a certain amount of kids, we take that group of kids and we dig in deeper to find out what exactly it is that is creating these challenges for them. And so that's partly why I brought Carrie Pickering and Kelly, because I want you to hear directly from them what they've been doing. This is an example of one student and the variety of assessments that we're using with the kids that we have questions about. I'm gonna walk you through this real quick, and then Carrie, you can talk about your real life. First, we make sure they're showing up, because that's important. We can't teach them if they're not coming. So we have an easy access method of making sure they're here. So this kid, no behavior issues, and they show up. Check. The circle in the middle represents assessments looking at kids' knowledge of patterns that exist in words when you read. So when you read a word that has, you remember magic E, vowel, consonant E, like take or make, that M and that E, that's a pattern. So there's lots of patterns that are recognizable and teachable in the English language, and we want to be able to give our kids those tools. So one of our assessments identifies that pattern. Now that circle you're looking at, each of those areas represents a different skill. And this is a new, very dynamic system that we're using. I'll let Carrie and Kelly talk about that, but that left side of the circle should be red for this age group. But the right side of the circle is the area that we'll work with this kid to teach to those skills. So BC stands for beginning consonant. This student has that skill. That's why it's green. The orange stands for final consonant. The red area is short vowels. These are all sequential skills that this child needs, that now, because of this assessment and ready access, their teacher and their interventionist can utilize this data to really target that area and teach that area that they need. The graph on the right, you saw this maybe last year, is we're progress monitoring. So we're monitoring this student's progress every 2 weeks to make sure they're making growth. And this was their first round of progress monitoring in October, showing things are working for him or them. And the top is we're tracking these in a system where we know we have the report and it's being updated, so all members of this child's team can see it. So they're learning to know, working to know all their letters and names based on our stuff.
Yeah. All right, so we met as a team, a data team, and we had to decide, we only have one reading interventionist and one math interventionist at Central School, so we had to decide how we were gonna focus in on the students and what students we were gonna focus in on. So we met as a team 3 weeks ago, I guess, and we
team, it was the classroom teacher and
interventionist, Deb, Carrie, Shelley, guidance counselor. It was a large team. And we met grade level. Each classroom has an intervention time, a math intervention time, and a reading intervention time. So we could focus in on that particular classroom. So we looked at their scores, all these things that Deb's been showing us today, and we picked the students that we felt needed the most intervention on a specific area. It wasn't just they were red on maps. It was a specific area that they needed work on and that we could improve them by looking at all the data. So after the end of that day, I had 8 groups that I was working with, 28 students. Each group has a specific focus. I progress monitor them every 2 weeks. As I'm working with them during the day, I'm taking notes on them and spiraling back the next day on what we need to work on again, as well as meeting with the classroom teacher to make sure I'm sort of piggybacking what they're working on too. So we're all working together as a team. It's a lot of planning, it's a lot of note taking and a lot of referring back to the data.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure.
All right, I think that's all I have to say about Liberty.
The,
Oh, let me tell you, real quick, I'll tell you what's happening in schools and then we'll pause. So what are we doing?
First, it's what's happening. How many students are you working with at a time?
At a time,
Yes,
up to 4.
up to 4.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
So what's happening in our schools right now, we, K through 6 have started evidence-based word study programming. So teachers in K through 3 are using one program, 4 through 6 are using a program that really looks at more complex kind of word study. And in our interventionists have all been trained in another program that goes a little deeper and has a little more multi-sensory, meaning like hands-on kind of opportunities for kids. We're meeting monthly. The meeting that Carrie described is happening monthly in every school, and that's school-based teams K through 8. And then our K through 3rd teachers, almost 100%, have chosen to join the Lead to Read work with Stern Center, which is a pretty rigorous professional development offering that we are doing with the Stern Center. And our interventionists are in year 2 of that program. All right, now we're ready to talk. Questions about ELA before we go to that?
Yeah, I asked you how many at a time, how long at a time?
The 4th graders get 35 minutes, every other group gets 30.
I'm sorry,
30.
30 for
30 to 35.
3rd grade, and do you just 4th grade, 3rd grade and 2nd?
I do 1 through 4.
1 through 4.
Yeah.
This woman doesn't breathe.
It's a busy day.
how long has this been going on? Is this the first year?
The first year doing it this, diving this deep, I would say, yes.
First year.
So,
Diving this deep. We've done intervention before, but not as focused and, data driven,
So because I think one of the questions obviously is going to be the sustainability of this intervention. Will this carry the kids forward?
Right.
And, okay.
That's that progress monitoring piece,
Mhm.
that we're not gonna wait until winter or spring even to see.
Well, because we know
Every
the
2 weeks we're
pattern,
checking.
we know the pattern already.
Yeah.
When they leave you, it doesn't get better. It takes a dive, so the sustainability of this effort has to, there hopefully will be a sustainability.
so I think the other piece is we had a concerted effort to move away from the Fontes and Pinel that was, that the district had gone into, a few years back, just pre-COVID. Because the research shows that it does not, have the outcomes for students that we know our students needed. And so as Fontes and Pinel was being introduced or started working in, special education made a concerted effort to begin this work coming out of COVID, because that's why you have the 21-22 data. And so it started as a special ed initiative to address kids that were coming out of COVID missing very specific pieces and wanting to be able to measure, just as Deb has kind of shown, those areas of focus for students. So we're not looking at just real broad pictures where a data you used to be able to, you get this, here's the kids, they're all in the red. Well,
What do you?
great, they're in red. What are we doing to address those issues? And now we can go in and specifically target those areas. And so when you say sustainability, the research shows that this approach does improve students' ability to read. And so that's why we've gone this way. So.
And that piece about the Lead to Read Stern Center, that knowledge base that's being built is what then gives teachers the ability to look at the data and know what it means and know how that equates to instruction with their kids. So all of our teachers will have a high level of expertise as they move through this professional development.
So that, going back real quick, this circle there, that's not just for interventionists, that's for teachers.
Everybody.
Yeah.
So a teacher can look at this and a teacher can see that a student is struggling in SV, right?
Short vowels.
Short vowels, thank you. And so maybe that's the work that Carrie is working with the student, but the teacher can also cycle in. But then the teacher says, well, I'm gonna focus on FCs, which is what? Final consonants. Sorry, but so the teacher might be focusing on one area and the interventionist is focusing on another. So it's not just, we're only focusing on one of those areas on a student at a time. But it gives the power to the classroom teacher to not just be looking at the data going, great, my kids are all in the red. So now what are we doing for that?
So is this additional time to their reading or in ELA work? Or is it during the ELA time that the teacher is having then? So this is a substitute. for-
During the ELA time, but it's a big ELA block, so the teachers meeting with small groups during that.
You have two. Can't see my
I'm not sure. Can you all hear me okay? I think the sound just cut out a little for me and I don't know if it's my computer or not. So, okay. Well, I will ask my question. Hopefully I'll hear the answer. I'm curious about if, I guess two parts. One is if you have any ideas about what might be underneath what looks like a fairly consistent drop from last fall to this fall, if it's the groups of students that are coming into the schools, like where they're at when they're coming in, or what might be underneath that. And then it seems like we're looking at the dibbles to get a better sense of what specific skills students need to be able to build, and with the idea that that would eventually show up in different MAP scores. But I wonder what you think about like the sequence and the timeline. So if we're looking at data in the winter and in the spring, what are the things that we would be looking for to see that what we're like our interventions have been successful?
So the first questions about what might have happened or occurred with that map drop. I try not to make excuses ever, right? Like data is data, but we did make a shift, context matters. So we did make a shift this fall in second grade specifically. We made a decision for the second graders. They've historically taken, there's two versions for second grade. And they've historically taken a version that's easier, that is read to them, but is not actually recommended by the MAP people. So we switched this fall to the second graders taking an assessment that they had to read themselves, which is a drastic difference. And so measuring comparisons across, and we're looking at whole school numbers. So I think that clearly must have had, that had to have had some impact. That's the one thing in my mind that stands out as an impact. Spring, we're working to try and do less computer-based assessments in a row for fatigue purposes. So the Vermont BTCAP state assessment is a computer-based assessment. MAP is a computer-based assessment. It's tiring. There's a stamina question there.
I think we, to your point about the individuality piece too, when they're taking with a teacher, you're getting that specific answer. On this one, it's either a random guess, or sometimes, you know, if it's, especially with the younger grades, which is why we excluded them in that cohort too. I've seen when I've given it, just overseeing them, they're just, you know, hitting it. It's more the click and drag skills that they didn't have. And that was something that we noticed with the youngers, especially on the iPad, because they take an iPad versus the Chromebook. And it was literally assessing their computer knowledge. And so we decided it was not really a valid test of their literacy and their math. It was really, how can they use on the computer? So we did decide to keep them out. But I agree that the assessment was a much more difficult one because it was not read to them. The students were used to having the test read to them. And so they were not really as focused because they were waiting for the computer to say whatever the question was. And so they were like, okay, I felt like the students were much more quick to just put an answer and to be done with it. So I can't say a statistical or anything, but.
And I think when your second question in
I
regards.
was thinking about, so I know we've set our proficiency goals around the map data, which is not as nuanced and doesn't help us understand as much. And I know the last time you shared with us, Deb, you were saying it's a lagging indicator. So we're putting all of these pieces in place. We have the research and evidence-based phonics programming, and we've got this like more focused approach in data, and that will take a bit to show up in our map data. But as you're thinking about how it is working with the focused intervention that is data-based and looking at how you're shifting what's happening based on the Dibble scores, I'm wondering, like, the next time we talk about this data or look at what's happening, where would you look for evidence of success that's not necessarily map, but might lead there?
That's a great question. Thank you. I think one of the next areas for us to start paying close attention to relates, when we looked at that rope model, relates to those upper strands, the vocabulary, the background knowledge, the comprehension, right? That's very hard to measure. And the best way to measure it is within the instruction within a classroom. And that's an area of assessment that we haven't developed yet. So children's writing, their ability to answer questions about a topic they know about, or to read, the reading they're doing in the classroom is going to be the place we get that information the most accurately. So my hope is that we're building that layer of our assessment across this year, where we have tools in the classroom that relate to those levels of vocabulary and upper strands to measure, to reflect on that area, if that makes sense. Might be a multi-year. And just the Dibbles, I think when we made our goals for the district, we said 20%, an increase of 20%. And when we looked at our data in the spring, there was a parallel between the two. And so I think we can think about that measure along with MAP. So Dibbles doesn't just do foundational skills, as I know you know that. But I think it's a nice complement. So it could be that that's a piece we reflect on the spring as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right, Matt. Back to Matt. We'll move a little bit more quickly there. So that's not much. Map. So here we are at map. It's a mouthful. What does it measure? So in our map, we get a score for students' operations and algebraic thinking. We get a geometry score. We get a measure of their statistics and probability knowledge, as well as the number systems. Also, again, computer-based. Here we are with Central, showing their growth across for all the students across the top, percentage of students who grew, and I can't see how many. Hang on. 30% of our students. So there's that dip again. So we are, it's a hard pill to swallow.
So that, can I just say,
Yes.
that bar
Yes.
is showing how much growth students, regardless of which achievement level they fell in, it's showing just how much they improved. Is that correct?
Yeah, so if I'm looking at that top bar, I would read it saying 44% of the students at Central Elementary did not meet their expected.
Their growth target.
Right,
Mhm,
okay.
It doesn't mean that they didn't grow.
mhm.
It just, so one of the things MAPS does is they create what's called a RIT score, RIT. And it's a point somewhere in that, based on the norms, they expect the average student will increase or grow at that. And so a student who is in the orange means they didn't reach that expectation. It doesn't mean that they didn't grow. It just means that they didn't grow as much as they expected that they should. And one of the biggest issues always in MAPS is those kids in green or blue, pardon me, how do you keep growing them if they're up towards the 99th percentile?
Don't have to
It's
worry.
hard to grow.
Well,
Well-
I disagree with you on that. We do have to worry about that, right? Because we need to challenge our kids, so.
They should be growing just as much or more.
Well, and I'll say, this is my understanding of that bar, and Kelly just brought something out of the
I
room.
wish there was
Forgets it.
some word.
That bar, that 13% who are in the blue are the students who grew, whose growth fell into the upper 80th percentile. So I could be a student last year who fell in the red. And if I grew a lot and then fell in the orange,
It's a,
I might actually be represented in that blue area.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah.
Kelly just brought up a really important point, which is that there's a lot of reading involved with the math process.
Which wasn't read to them in this particular.
Again, wasn't read to them on this
Mhm.
particular.
And it had been previously.
It had been, yeah.
For second graders.
Second graders only, yeah.
I think what we have to be careful of is not equating that to proficiency.
Correct.
Because if you're saying if that's just growth,
The
that
top
doesn't
bar.
mean that
The lower
those
bars.
top
The lower
ones are
bars.
proficient. It simply means they've grown.
Right,
That's
and
the
the
top
bottom
bar.
ones
The
are.
bottom ones are achieved.
Proficiency.
Yeah.
That's Central. Next is Saxton's River. That's the drop, that's still. And the middle school. All 6 through 8. And our current 9th grade. Funny, when I talked about these scores with the current 9th grade teachers, they said, well, we take things seriously when we get up in high school.
But
Still, they don't-
But this is a reflection of, and I think that's the point, you left it hanging on purpose, that was a dramatic pause. But this is a reflection of their growth and their achievement through 8th grade last year, for a whole year.
And with the situation in the 8th grade last year with our math, that,
It's something,
yeah.
a lot of teachers worked really hard at it.
When we saw those numbers, we were excited to see those numbers. Because of the challenges that existed last year. So,
Hopefully we can expect even better this year with a more stable.
Yes.
Teacher situation in our 8th graders.
So that's again, that 30,000 foot view. What are we doing now to really target our instruction? We've started a new assessment, using the new assessment K through 6. Called Universal Screener of Number Sense. I'm finally getting it. It lives in a system called Forefront. It measures our foundational skills in number sense. This is our first year. And this again is an interview-based assessment. I'm going to show you an example of what that score, what that information looks like, but I really wish I could show you the system. It's so dynamic, but kids' names are all over it. We tried. So this is an example of a class, looking at a first grade example. There's a whole first grade. This is one of the, this is the number sense screener. So each of those bars represents one specific task kids were asked to do. I hovered my cursor to show what happens, but that count by tens at the bottom refers to that number 3, which is that bar above it, all the kids, how they did in relation to that task. And Carrie, Kelly, do you remember what they're asked to, is it just a straight up count by tens?
Yeah,
Straight up.
I think it was beyond 100, so like 110 or 120,
So as a teacher, I can look and see, okay, 8 of my kids struggled in the area of counting by tens, but 7 of them didn't. half my class, maybe I'm gonna count by tens every time we walk to a special, right? That would be an occasion, and this is one of the things we're talking about when we meet in our data meetings. That's a whole class kind of a skill to work on. If at least half your class needs it, go ahead and give it to everybody. So let's look at the next example. The next example is a 5th grade class. I hovered over, you'll see the number 5 under there, which was, the task was 30 times 4. The kid had to mentally multiply. And that was a group of 8 out of whatever 27 plus 8 is, 35, thank you. So those 8 kids might be a targeted intervention group or 4 group. Because the other 27 do not need it. Again, this is the entire 5th grade class of BAMS. I'm sorry, BFMS. We were there.
I did that for a couple of years. Just kidding.
I totally understand. Okay, so that's our diagnostic data use right now in the realm of math. That's a new assessment and it's being used for every student. Our teachers also are piloting a new math program. And we have All Learners Network, which is a statewide organization that we work closely with. And we have a new coach from their organization who is a dear friend of mine. We're very excited about her. She's working with K through 6th, and then we have another coach that works 7 through 8. And those coaches are in schools working with teachers, helping them understand the math that's in front of our kids. And then we also have All Learners Network. ALN is All Learners Network, doing trainings at every professional development day. And we talk about math. We should start having math first at our data meetings, because I can go on and on about Lucy, but we are also touching on math during that. Talk about what it looks like in real life.
So I gave the universal screener of number sense to each student in our school K to 4. It's actually a very quick assessment to give, no more than 10 questions on the assessment. We compiled the data, brought it to our data meeting, and decided which students would best be serviced with some math interventions. So I don't have as many groups as Carrie. I only have 7 groups. I have 22 kids, I think, and I meet with them for a half an hour. I have time in my schedule for kindergarten, but I have not delved down there yet. We're gonna give it a little bit of time for them to get settled in. My day looks a lot like Carrie's, with a lot of formative assessments as you're working with the kids. Like with my 1st graders, we're working on counting 1 to 30, actually. We're getting stuck on those team numbers, which are very tricky. We're working on number ID, so we're constantly doing quick little assessments in the groups and figuring out where the support still needs to go. We do progress monitoring every 2 weeks. And I think that's it. Awesome. Any questions about that?
The thing that puzzled me is, and maybe it's just the nomenclature or something, but when you showed the objectives or whatever, or what the math did for ELA, made sense to me. The math one, algebraic concepts, geometry, I'm thinking, is it?
In the elementary,
First, second,
right,
third.
in the elementary grades, it is primarily number sense and base 10 number systems. They do have a little bit of geometry measurement, but not on the assessment.
Find that list to count and add or subtract or divide or something that would be, relevant to these little kids.
So I remember years ago, so my son's 21 now, but when he was in 1st grade, his school did the maths. And the teacher was going over the scores with us, and he was like in the 0 percentile for measurement. 1st grade measurement. Now, I got the tape measure, we measured all the time at home, right? We did all those things. I knew my son knew how to measure. And I said, well, talk to me about the test, because I'd always come from high school. And the teacher said, well, you take the mouse. And I said, just stop right there. My son had never used a mouse for a keyboard. So I went home and taught him how to do a mouse, use a mouse. The next time they took the test, he was in the 99th percentile for measurement. So, but measurement is like kids, they literally take a ruler and have to hold it up against something and show some measurement. So there is geometry, those are the big categories.
Yeah.
That's how math.
They're appropriate activities.
Yeah.
Even though
They're not doing the Pythagorean
I saw the list, 4 times 30, I could say, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, they're not working on the Pythagorean theorem and they're not doing proofs and.
But they can tell you what a parallelogram is, and a trapezoid is, things like that.
Grade appropriate.
Yeah.
And it's more at the upper grades that those skills are
Right.
focused on. We're still on numbers and operations.
But that diagnostic info comes from that screen that
Yeah,
we use.
yeah.
How much time is being used for assessing?
I would say on average, 1 30-minute block every 2 weeks.
Or are you talking all year long?
Oh, yes.
I want to clarify that.
Well,
like-
well,
Time for.
she'd say
Yeah,
30
and it-
minutes every 2
For me,
weeks.
it's not even a 30-minute
Right.
block. My progress monitoring are 1 minute each student, so.
I'm sorry, I can't-
My progress monitoring is 1 minute for each student, so, mine is like 10 minutes for each group every 2 weeks.
okay, so there's 10.
The beginning of the year
Yeah, oh,
was
yeah,
a
that's a
limit,
whole,
right?
yeah.
But
that's
that,
a lot.
is gonna change. So we started the year off, our interventionists carried a very large bulk of the administration of these assessments. As teachers get trained and as we move into, future years, it'll be shared across all of our roles. So I think what we're looking for is, again, like I said before, as efficient as possible with the most ready information, with as little student time lost as possible. So a
Yeah, 'cause that's a
one-on-one,
concern, because that's away from actual teaching time if you're assessing all the time. So, and we certainly know that recovery from out of school and COVID and all the things that went on, we need as much instruction time as possible. So we do need to know where they're at, but we also need that instruction time, zeroed in on, so.
yeah, we're very aware, we're very, in tune with trying to make that we care deeply about that as well.
I'm sorry.
We care deeply about that as well.
I know,
So that's
I'm sure you do.
one of our.
But I appreciate with the circle, it shows specific targeted areas of focus, and so that shows us, like, we're not gonna focus on beginning consonants. That particularly that one student already had it, and it gets that linear or that granular for each student, so it does take a little bit more time, but it gives you a lot more, better feedback and how to target their instruction, so it's a good use of instructional time.
It's a very different topic between, these are formative assessments that you're gonna use for instruction versus a summative assessment like whatever the state's making us.
Right.
Those are just-
Which takes, that's different.
Yeah.
And that is a concern, how much time we spend on those, because they have kind of no instructional value, and that's often the problem.
So true.
Well, that's why I asked, and it's not.
I'd be curious, I'd be curious, with the principals, how long is your, in general, Carrie and Laura, for your case report, how long is the ELA period each day and how long is the math period each day? And is it the same as every other subject or whatever? Because the bottom line here, unfortunately, is this is not a great report. We were hoping for better, and to see the deterioration there is kind of scary. And granted, there's always factors involved, but one of the things that comes to my mind is are we focusing class time at the elementary school and particularly at the middle school? Should we be having longer class periods for these two critical subjects? I mean, we've got to do something. We keep doing it the same way. This initiative that you're doing is quite different. It's aimed at the underperformers and stuff like that. Good, very, very good. You know, as long as we've got the talent, teaching talent to do it. I think it's a great thing, but we've got to depend on our classroom teachers to get our kids better prepared in these courses. And like I say, if you're doing 40 minutes a day on ELA, maybe you should do 60 minutes a day and something less on health or PE or art or music or whatever it is. But we've got to do something. Our expectations of you is much higher than what we're seeing. So I don't know. I'm throwing that out because I'm so frustrated at the trends here.
I mean, very valid, and I think one of the things, that's what we were looking at with the New Solutions group, and we had them up through the middle school, is looking at that. One of the things they were showing us is that typically how much time in elementary school is devoted to, say, math or reading, how much time at the middle school age, and how much time at the high school age. And there's actually a dip nationally at the middle school age for those critical things. And so, again, that informative piece will help inform how middle school does some scheduling next year. But at the same time, we're looking at, do we want to continue our relationship with New Solutions and have them pivot down to our elementary schools and possibly help us out with some of that work as well of how we schedule down there. But part of it is getting through the middle and high school at this time. So, but it's a valid question that you're asking.
Yeah, so how much time are we?
So we've shifted our scheduling this year, and so we took a little bit of social studies and science time as a specific time, but it's it's incorporated into the literacy component. So we have 60 minutes for each math and literacy outside of the intervention block. So there's 90 minutes total for each subject. And 30 of those minutes is concentrated specifically on intervention. So it's acceleration for those who might need acceleration. It's remediation, and intervention for those who need, whether it's special ed, Title I, or just classroom, instruction in that tier 1 piece. And so everybody in our school has a 90-minute block for ELA and for math. And so that is an increase from what we've had in the past, specifically to address some of these areas of, loss and things too.
Okay.
So we were able to pivot
And
short.
Laura?
Sure, so currently we have 90 minutes of reading instruction, which includes an intervention block within that. And we have writing in addition to that 30 minutes. And we have math for a 60-minute block of time, and we also have a WIN.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Math for a 60-minute block of time, and we also have a WIN block, which is what I need. And so students get either reading, math, intervention during that time.
So you are both putting more time in now in response to this as well. And how do yours break out?
5th and 6th grade gets 76 minutes of ELA and math a day with intervention every other day. And 7 and 8 have 49 minutes of ELA a day and math a day, with intervention every day, a 30-minute intervention block every day.
Okay. What about them?
Oh, same thing.
Just same
49
thing,
minutes, yeah.
so they get the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would encourage us, though, to consider the fact that it's only 1 year that we're in on. Like, a year ago, FAFSA Pennell was something that was just being looked up from, and that programming, and again, maps I'm glad you pointed that out. The need for kids to read in order to score well on that math assessment causes questions to really know if that is a true representation of their knowledge. But the reading that we were utilizing within our classrooms, it's going to take time to dig back out from that. So I think we've got classroom teachers that are dedicated and making shifts that are gonna address that rope model that we showed you hasn't really been, those pieces haven't been addressed in classrooms. So the time is really important, but also the what we're doing with the time is changing as well.
I'm curious, I think you said 76 minutes, fourth, fifth and sixth, and 49 minutes, seventh and eighth. Is there a reason for
Yeah, we have
cutting back on the?
Well, no, they have the 4 core classes, so there's more emphasis put in across the board, throwing in science and social studies too. I think at the 7th and 8th grade level, where we kind of run more of like a hybrid elementary, secondary schedule for the 5th and 6th graders. So it's with their core teachers for a longer period of time. So it's kind of like a transition from being with one teacher all day to being with a teacher for, you know, a longer block and not transitioning between classes as much. And then once they get into 7th and 8th grade, it's more of like a secondary block.
Well, you know, if the numbers, then that was look like a good move. I think it'd be one thing, but the numbers don't.
Right.
We show that that's a great move. They're not improving. Although this last year, those kids from the 8th grade did good. Anyway, okay.
But aren't they within the science and the social studies, they would be getting some reading and ELA type things and some math type things too, so.
Yep, and then they're spending 30 minutes a day too in an intervention, either a reading or a math intervention on top of that 49 minutes of instruction.
30 minutes of intervention. And is that model new?
Yeah, that's this year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Teachers are really excited.
Yes, yep, it's been going well too.
That gives us a lot of information. We really appreciate that. Were there any other questions? Caitlin, did you have any, or Bill? Don't want to forget you guys.
Bill's muted.
No, I really appreciate hearing about this. It's helpful to understand, and I think just getting a sense of where things are and what interventions we're trying, it helps us, I think, like I know I've said before, just know what you all are finding most useful so that we can support that, because I think we all want to see students be able to have the skills that they need. So thank you so much for sharing it in such detail. Really helpful.
Priscilla? Priscilla. Oh gosh. Priscilla. Oh boy.
I hear you, Bill. I think that they can hear you as well, maybe.
Thank you, Caitlin. I'm glad you can hear me. Priscilla, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Bill, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. For some reason on my side, it was on mute. I had a question earlier on literacy, and I'm curious if the data shows a pattern of backsliding in literacy after the summer break.
That's a good question. Well, the problem with what we're looking at with MAP, the reason that wouldn't necessarily give us that information is because those colors and the percentile rankings, we could look at their actual scores, but what we're looking is them in comparison to all the other kids, which all other kids also have a summer break. So I don't know that that would represent that, but we could look at that. That could be something we bring in the spring.
Yeah, if you're testing every 2 weeks, you might be able to.
Well, different tests.
Yeah.
Different tests. The every 2 weeks is a 1 minute little dipstick
Okay.
versus the MAP, which
Those
is
will
the
give you all
computer.
one, yeah, comparison.
But that's a good point, Bill. I'll see about it, if I can bring something that gives us that information when we see you in the spring.
Right, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else, any other questions? Okay, if not, thank you so much for all of your information and everything that you've done for us. We really appreciate that.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, committee updates, building and grounds, do we need one scheduled or have we? scheduled?
I would like, to do a walk around each of our 3 schools. But I want to time it so that we're okay on the budget thing. I don't want to. But I think basically to just look at the physical condition of the buildings. I think it's a good discipline to have once a year, a walkthrough. And again, we don't have to do it all 3 buildings one day or whatever, but I think if we could get something like that scheduled for the board to participate in.
That'd be good. Are there any days in particular that are better for board members?
I mean, I would assume during the day would be better, just to be able to see more things. And I mean, if we don't want to interfere with instruction that's going on, I mean, I'm always happy to have you in buildings when there's kids in the buildings, because that's what we do. Then I would, we'd be looking at like maybe the 20th or the 21st, which is where we have in-service days and stuff like that. That might be a more appropriate time to.
Which would not be when the students would not be here then.
Correct.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, I think it's not really to observe that. It's really to just check out things. Those days are good for me. Yeah.
Tuesdays do not, and Wednesdays do not work for me.
Monday the 20th.
For mornings. I teach Tai Chi on these days.
The afternoons too.
Afternoons, I can do after 12. They're both days I'm done by 12.
You'll need to get Rick.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah, we don't have to schedule that tonight.
Okay, so anyway, we've given you the information and then reach out to us and let us know what works for you guys.
It sounds like potentially the 28th or the 21st in the afternoon might be appropriate.
The 20th, Deb and I are booked for a PD, but in the afternoon.
So, okay.
But the morning of the 20th would be good.
Okay, so let us know.
I know.
Maybe doing.
It'll have to be warned because you're gonna have a quorum.
Yeah.
Pardon?
It'll have to be warned because there'll be a quorum.
Right. Yeah, the 20th is our board meeting. Our budget meeting, so. I don't know if we want to try to do all 3 in one afternoon on the 21st. Or we want to do it before the meeting on the 20th.
Yeah, I'll check with Rick Schumann. I think it's imperative that he be there. So let me just.
Right.
Let me check with Rick and I'll.
Those are possibilities for you
Thank
to
you.
think out and consider and then let us know.
Yeah.
Okay,
It'll be the end of the year.
okay, so.
It has to be later.
I was just picking that, those were the first 2 dates that came to mind that were open dates, so I'll look at some others also.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that, Andy. New business, 21C after school and summer programs, Sarah.
First, I have some handouts, but I'm gonna pass it around.
On the after school.
This is different.
No, this is different. Okay, all right, good.
And just Bill and Caitlin, I believe this was emailed to you, shortly before the meeting started.
Yes.
So this first handout that I have is Vermont after school programs. Do you guys want to share one?
So there's a couple of things that I did pass out. First, on this first handout, you'll see the very top box, why after school and summer programs matter, which is this that it printed out. It did, unfortunately, because of the copyright, there's a little section missing, but it is linked in what Nicole sent out earlier, so you can post the full piece on it. But I just wanted to cover it because it's discussing why after school and summer programs matter, and why third spaces, like after school and summer programming, programs matter. And some of the highlights of this article, really just cover decades of research, explaining that students who have high quality after school programs, are in a position where they're learning and growing. They avoid risky behaviors. They have higher attendance rates. They have better grades. Their behavior show improvements. And so those are also a reflection of some of the school day things that come from students being regular attendees. Another piece that there's some research on is around career in college and how that's impacted by kids that have third space options. And then it also talks a little bit about how it's keeping youth safe, inspires learning, and support for working families. And it provides a sense of belonging. And more recently, they're starting to look at mental health just in connection to the pandemic and like how that's a bigger need. So these are all reasons why after school and summer programs matter. And it's a huge percentage of youth's day. It's approximately 20% of their waking hours are in school, but then the remainder is all in other spaces. So it's how we fill those spaces that makes it important. So I just wanted to throw this in here because I find this really valuable, and this is a great organization. They're located in Williston. I use them as a resource all the time. They are part of 21C. Like they're connected with the state. So I have a regular person I meet with. They provide professional development. And lots of resources. So I do like to give them a shout out because they're very valuable in the work that I do. So this next handout here, so you were right, I did present a couple weeks ago and it was to the whole board for the district. And that was a slideshow similar to what Deb did, where it explained kind of like the basics of everything. And this very next box about program enrollment, I do want to highlight again, just around the schools connected to the Rockingham district. And the Bells Falls right now has about 21 students, average of 21 students in after school programs. Central is about 28. And Saxon's River is 26. Actually, I think it might be going up to 28. I heard last week. So I just wanted to touch base on that and really, again, touch on that our district serves around 120 students in after school programs. And last summer we served around 217 students. Of the summer, there were 40 students from Central and 22 from Saxon's River, and then the middle school was 69. So it's a huge portion of, and if you think about it in regards to the size of a school, there, 120 is sort of around Carrie's size school. And then if you think about the 217, almost close to the middle school. So if you think about the context of it being similar to a school size. The next spot, actually I'll pause. Is there any questions about that first section? Okay. The next section is about summer and after school expenditures as a district. You'll see the after school programs and the summer are separated out.
And I do want to note with the figure for the after-school programs, the middle school was not fully operational. And there were no tutors in place at the time at 4 out of the 5 sites. And transportation was not included in this as well because it was absorbed into the SU, which is something we're definitely looking at. And that also does not include if there's after school programs there, in after school programs, when connected to some students, they may need a nurse. So that's like something that has been coming up recently that we're having to add to the budget. And one-on-one salaries and benefits are not included in these numbers as well. So I'd just like to point that out. That is the after-school programs expenditure total for last year, but also excluded some things. The summer, we did have transportation added into that, so we have a bit of an accurate number there. Unfortunately, we didn't have tutors at the middle school site, but it is something that I think is important and we should certainly get in place. The elementary level did have tutors because it was centralized, it covered all of the kids in that way. And so just a side note to Deb's reports, I know that there's a lot of value in like the summer programming and that gap that people are talking about. And one of the pieces around which I'm going to come to 21C funding, if you have it in place, a big portion of that is like, for example, this coming February, I'll be reporting and I'll be looking at after school program students because Bellas Falls was a 21C site. I'll be looking at their scores and taking that list of after school students and comparing their scores to see how they improved because of them being in after school or summer programs. So that is a piece, there is data being collected. It just is a piece of the 21C that's in place. So I value like all of what I just saw because it was really helpful for me to see even in regards to those programs. So back to this box about expenditures, you'll see that it's about $1,500 a student for after school and summer programs. And if there's a student that in fact goes all of the days that it's offered, is about $9 a day for a student. On the next page, on page 2, actually I'll pause. Do you guys have any questions about that box? Okay. So the next one you'll see is just a future projected amount that I put together. And this includes adding tutors, nurses, a data evaluation position similar to what I was just talking about. Like if you are a 21C site, there are a lot more requirements around actually hiring someone to take care of the data that's being, put together through after school and summer programs. And then this is also including transportation salaries and benefits. So there are some additions, and with this projected amount, I would hope to we want to add more students. There was goals on the first page, which obviously we'd be hiring more staff for that. And then really implementing more tutoring services. And then I have talked briefly with Kelly about possible high school programming. We're starting to really look at it and what it could be for after school and summer programs for the high school level. So it's kind of a future thought for them. Any questions on that box? Okay. So we've been funding the after school programs specific to the Rockingham, with the exception of some Bellas Falls Middle School funds last year. Those were through 21C, but since then, everything else has been done through ESSER. This year, the school year of after school programs and this coming summer will be covered through ARP ESSER. After that, those funds are going away. So we are planning to apply for the 21C grant as a Rockingham district. I think we kind of touched on it a little bit last time. That before it was the middle school, but now we're trying to encompass it to include the Rockingham schools so that we can serve more students. So I did not print out that grant application. It's very long, but in what Nicole sent out earlier, you should be able to click on this link and take a look at the full grant if you want. The intent to apply is due coming up. It's on the 22nd. One of the reasons I'm here, certainly. The next, the application is due in February, and then announcements will be in April, and then it will start July, if we were to get the grant, it would be July 1, 24. So a little piece that I want to just cover is, for new sites, if you're applying for a 21C, you can be awarded, anywhere between 90,000 and 115,000 per site. And then you'll see there's a little diagram that explains that it's a sunsetting grant where 100% is funded years 1 through 3, and then the 4th year is less. It's 75%, and then the 5th year is 65%. So it gradually sunsets, and the idea is that 21C is wanting to build programs that are sustainable for your district. So it's really trying to get you to that point where you also can locally be funding some of it as well. So one piece that I'm unsure of how it's going to work out is that if there's an existing site, it can be no more than 50% of the total budget. So I've tried to get some answers, but the person who is the state rep for 21C, he can't give me the answer. Like, it's, you know, he because of his role. So the one piece I'm not sure about is the middle school, how that may impact that amount.
Are they considered as having an existing?
That's what
Even though they were funding through us?
Yeah, that's the question I asked, but because he's like the person that manages the grants, he can't like give me any kind of, there's lots of gray area that he can't answer. That I did ask that.
And when the 21C grant expired, we didn't apply for renewal on purpose. Like, so
We're starting fresh.
So we are
starting over again. That's our argument, so.
Yeah, we are starting fresh, but we aren't a news. Yeah, so it's a tricky one, but so that I'm unsure of how that will actually result. So we want to continue to do these after school and summer programs, and if we receive the 21C grant funds, we're just looking to see if the Rockingham board supports this, just the process of us applying for 21C. And then also considering how local funds would be applied if we got that one of those amounts for the 4th and 5th year. So that's a piece of it. And then just quickly skipping to the next page, I did include what our past award amounts have been, just so that people had an idea. In the 21C world, you as the Wyndham Northeast, we can apply for 2 grants at a time. And at one point, Westminster applied and the middle school applied. So those are like the 2 spots. Most districts don't have 2, most have 1. So, but they applied at different times. And Grafton used to be a part of Westminster in their last grant, but because they were not able to meet the objective, like hiring, they didn't run. So their funding was, they lost those grant funds for this coming year. So Grafton doesn't have those. And then, as Andy said, ours expired in the middle school last year. So I just wanted, there's that amount of like, if we were looking at 50%, I'm not sure if it's an old site or not. But, so that's just the piece on the 21C, and I did include, but I don't necessarily need to go into detail, but I did take from the grant application itself, just the overview and background of 21C, and I don't need to go into full details. It's there for you guys to read. And then on the very last page, if we were to be a 21C site, I just listed all of the people that would, and groups that would be important to help run this as a 21C funded after school and summer program. And it would be a great team. And I think a big piece of it is like considering that, you know, maintenance is involved, the school cafe, the principals, you guys, the superintendent, and then obviously building up community partners. Just on a side note, I have been working with Food Connects. I just recently am reaching out to the tech center in Springfield. Actually, our middle school just went with that last week, Henry, that they went. They are going for like 3 sessions this November to the tech center to take advantage of some of their programming. So I'm really trying to build up those community partners again. And as I mentioned before, the Main Street Arts and Grafton Nature Museum, they're all involved already, but just really trying to build those up as well. So that is that. And then lastly, I do have something I want to pass out. Don't need to go through it right now. Bear with me. Where did I put it? But Does anybody have any questions about what I reported thus far?
All right, one, so Westminster used to access child subsidy. Is that part of the plan, or is these after-school programs been completely free since they've been ESSER?
They've been free since they've been ESSER. Yes. That's what your question was about ESSER?
That was part A of the question.
and
Part
then
B of the question would be,
the
if
child.
going forward, would there be a charge so that
Sure.
we could access the
Yes.
child subsidy?
So there's a couple pieces to that. As a 21C site, you do not have to be part of that system, but with 21C, you can charge. So, yes, I think moving forward, I would be setting up some kind of system, either through that organization or on our own, around having a fee, there be a sliding scale fee, and
Sure.
figuring out like what the cost of after school versus summer, 5 weeks or just a session of after school. But I do think that's a key part to
Yeah.
having some revenue.
Yeah, and I think it's important that it helps people value things more when
Yes.
there is even a nominal cost to it.
Yes.
But also Westminster, the amount they collected in subsidy was significant, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that was worth doing.
Yes.
And there's a balance because that subsidy comes, because you then have to meet Department of Health regulations, which limit the number of students to staff ratio. And that created, especially under the ESSER, funding, some real constraints. And so that was a reason to go away from. We had a long discussion with Department of Health, did we have to, did we not have to?
What is the subsidy?
So you can get you can apply for a subsidy grant through Department of Health.
Okay.
Because it's childcare. And so,
Childcare subsidy.
so then you get some funds back.
I see.
That help offset it. But again, the caveat is you are very limited in the student to teacher ratio. And again, coming out of COVID and whatnot, it's been a challenge to get staff. I mean, it's been a real challenge. They're burned, and then to say, hey, come spend a couple more hours, is check,
Do they have to be licensed, or is it?
Yeah,
strictly adults?
No, it's adults. They don't have to be licensed. But and in fact, there is one person who works at Saxon River who isn't a teacher for us. They come in and just work that time and stuff. So, yeah. So that has been some of the challenge. I just want to also add, I mean, we, through ESSER and made a very concerned with the group that did our recovery plan and continues on with our other work. With the strategic plan, the value of after-school programming, as Sarah kind of pointed out, has been something that's been very important with our students and wanting to provide that for families. A lot of families do value it as they're working and wanting to get that. So really the ask right now from the Rockingham board is to support the application for 21C. But knowing that potentially in the future is going to mean budgeting funds because it's a sunsetting grant in year 4 and 5.
Well, we used to.
And really what we tried to do with Sarah is to really consolidate a lot of the programming under one thing, so it's not like schools are in competition with each other. So we're trying to, provide this for students across the board. And summer has been, I think, a tremendous success of showing that where it's been robust. And we've been offering some good programming for kids. We've been able to consolidate them down to more individual sites or like 1 or 2 sites so that we're not running buses all over the place. We can consolidate staff and stuff of that nature. So that's been the benefit of bringing it under one umbrella as opposed to let the middle school do what they do. And they did it well. So I don't want to, and let Westminster do, but this would involve for you all students within Rockingham would have access to after-school care.
And with a sliding scale fee, that would help offset some of the costs.
Some, yeah.
So,
It's not tremendous. I have
Right,
to admit.
no, but
Yeah.
it's,
So I think,
something.
you know, I don't think there's any question. I've always been supportive of after school. Summer was nice, but, you know, and it would be nice, I'm sure. But I look at this like I look at my principals. And I say, all right, we're gonna give you a number for your budgets. And, you know, we're coming off this huge subsidy thing, back to reality, back to the taxpayer. And I think that I know what's going on at the SU in terms of the first budget that they showed the finance committee. We've seen a little bit of the Rockingham budget and there's some issues there, but I think that really this thing needs to be both with the input of the superintendent and the principals. It needs to be positioned in terms of the programs that we're offering our kids. And I think that, you know, grants for this kind of program, particularly given the numbers that I'm looking at, is very crucial now. I mean, to me, it's the difference between whether we have it or we don't have it. I think the grants are important. I think charging where it's feasible to charge. I mean, if you put a price tag on it, you're gonna turn a lot of kids that would take advantage of it away. That's not the best answer, but in some cases, it could be a source of revenue. I, as a resident, I would be willing to personally make a contribution to this kind of thing. I think in our communities, I don't know what that causes, I don't know if that causes a problem or not, but I think if there was a way
I got a pen, you got your checkbook. Yeah, we're all set.
Just give me a little bit. But I think if it's possible to seek support from the community, my feeling is it's worthwhile, but it can't come from the tax roll, because we've got to do all these other things with the tax things, and we have to be creative. You guys have to be creative. And again, more importantly, is with regards to the superintendent and the principals, it has to fit as part of this overall program of teaching our kids.
But to tag on to that, if you have a service to provide in terms of a skill to teach or something like that, that could be your give back, is that you will agree to teach for so many weeks or something like that, a group. And that's where some of the funding can be a community partner, is a group. So it's more than, right, so there's a lot of options that come out there besides just monetary ones too, so.
honestly.
So again, I think that's the reason we're here is to, we understand that need and the need to go after the 21C funding. One of the main things we need is school board support to be able to start down the road. I mean, the last thing I want is Sarah and a whole and the principals to go put a lot of effort into something, and then if there isn't board support, then 21C is gonna, that's the first thing you need to have. So that's the reason why we're here, so.
Chris,
So can I make a motion that the Rockingham board support the
21C application.
21C, yeah, fill my words in, please. 21C application for the Rockingham School.
okay, we have a motion that the Rockingham board support the 21C application for the after-school and summer programs. Is there any other question from Caitlin or Bill out there, or either of the board members here?
Is 21C after school and summer, or is it just after
Yeah.
school?
Yeah, after school and summer program.
I would just add in my comment. I don't agree with everything Jim says. I really, he'll be surprised to hear that. But I know, but I do agree though that it should, like we just saw, one of the big needs is some academic support, so that getting tutors into the schools for the summer program in particular, if you can, I understand there are constraints, but would be a great thing to do, because obviously we need it.
Any other comments? Okay, then I'm gonna ask you to vote. Bill, how do you vote? Just give me your either thumbs up or so I can see you. Good. Caitlin?
Thumbs up.
Caitlin? Yeah,
Thumbs up.
okay. In this room? Just thumbs up or down.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We're all in
Thank you.
support. It's unanimous. Okay, River Charities donation, can I have a motion for accepting the River Charities donation for Saxons River Elementary School and for Bellas Falls Middle School?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion was made by Jim McCollum to accept the River Charities donation for Saxons River Elementary School and for Bellas Falls Middle School. Bill and Caitlin online, if you give me a thumbs up or down. Okay, and in the room.
Yes.
Okay, so we're all in favor of that. It is 7:15. Just a question before we do the personnel matter, which is all listed on there. Do we want to, can we do the old business in there about 1 or 2 sentences?
I can do it in one.
Oh. All right, let's do if the board members don't object, let's do the old business for discussion first. Update on Cherry Hill green space.
So one for each one. Update on the green space. We've got to pull the deed. I've got to have an attorney look at it, draft some type of memo or agreement with the resident because there is nothing in place contractually or written down. The parking at CES with Parks Place, we were able to find the lease agreement back from 2010. It's pretty clear and indicates what the agreements were. So I guess if the board wanted me to go back in and change those agreements, I would have to go into negotiations with them. But in talking with Park Place, there's an agreement, they pay $1 every year, they maintain the space. I think signage needs to be updated, it's the only thing. But other than that, it's a so I guess.
Okay, it was playground for Central, that's what it was at one time. If we, can we possibly have you, send us the lease agreement for us to review and we'll look at it at the budget meeting next time?
Definitely. Bus Depot Road, I've had a conversation with the realtor. We played a little bit of tag, so just waiting for a response, but I haven't been able to have a verbal conversation with them about that piece. As far as the master projects, that might take a little bit more time to kind of dig into.
Okay, well, we had an update on those last time. Is it all right with the board members if we put that off till next time?
Yes.
Okay. Caitlin, Bill, okay with you guys? Okay. And so E is the budget, the schedule of classes, you had those for us, right, Henry?
I have two different versions because we went a waterfall schedule, so that other one's probably gonna make you go crazy, so I thought that was probably a little bit easier one. It's all the classes that are taught and how many students are in each section. But that breaks into like when they're taught.
How many,
Are they all the same?
They're the same, yes. This is just a more headache version right there.
because these are individual teachers.
Those are all the teachers in the school, and what they teach, how many sections and how many students. in
It's
each
one
section.
set.
There's only one.
There's only one copy.
And
Yes,
is this-
I can email, I figured I would email you guys. I have them all saved. Just rather than doing all the trees.
And this one is one sheet per, or is this all each?
That's all, that's the same as this. That just breaks down each period that they're actually teaching throughout the day. It has the lunch times in there and also their prep periods, which are will be the blanks at the end. And that's every teacher in there too. So it's everybody that you see on. It was similar to how it was presented. This was the pre-COVID. Numbers with that. 2019, 2020, the last four.
I'm gonna take these and, I will consolidate this for the board members and send this out to you,
Good.
okay? Music program, the music program, we had a question as to the number of students. Jake said we'll put that, wanted that on that, so.
Well, it's just, I mean, I would just say, if we're not gonna get into the budget tonight. I guess that's your plan,
Yeah,
not to get into the
well,
budget?
we've got a budget meeting on the third one. I will do however much on the budget you want tonight.
Well, I think we've got to give the principals more definition as to what to expect. So I think, in terms of, in looking at the numbers that Jim had given us, there's, what I'm thinking of is similar to what we talked with Andy the other day, with the exception of special ed, is that we're looking for a 5% increase for the Rockingham budget. I think that in looking at these preliminary numbers, both Central and Saxons River have some room. Henry, you don't have any room, although I did make a contribution this afternoon. Right, Jim? 162,000. I did that all by myself. We had somehow had 5+ janitors put into the middle school, and so we've got the normal staff is 4 janitors at the middle school. Rick is one of the 4. So that helps a lot. I mean, that helps. But I think and again, in looking at the 5%, if Central were about 4%, maybe you'd have some extra wiggle room or something like that. But I think that's a good number to shoot for in terms of the budget increase. Rick, yeah.
162,000.
So I think, at the middle school, you look at the staffing and stuff, and you say, we already talked about it. Probably my most important thing about this year's budget is I want the focus to be in the classroom. And we talked during Deb's presentation about the number of minutes we're spending each day on those 2 critical areas of math and English, and how we have to improve. It's so embarrassing now to look at these proficiency rates that we just have to improve, and I think it says we have to do something different. Obviously, the interventionist is a critical piece of that. And you got to figure that into your budget. one of the things we didn't get in Jim's budget was the title. The title teachers that would be, on paper at least, available to Rockingham for the 2025 year. That's going to be a critical piece of this interventionalist thing. The draft, the last draft that I saw, it looked like there was only 2 title teachers for Rockingham. Which
we've gone through and cleaned that up,
Okay.
but all the title is all assigned to the SU.
Right.
Right.
And then it's based on an allocation. Where the assessment comes out and the formula that gets punched out, but I mean, there's some rough numbers of where.
What I'm saying is that in terms of providing the in-classroom support, my feeling is we've got to look at the title teachers as part of this interventionalist, that's what they are. Part of this interventionalist team that we're gonna have in our 3 buildings. And
Yes, I agree.
so obviously any help we get there will give these folks budget relief.
So I also want to be very, very cautious. I brought this up at the SU Finance about maintenance of effort. So you can't rely on the grants to pay for things like solely that, like cut your local budget to use then the grants to compensate for what you've
I
cut.
would never do that.
And well, we failed maintenance of effort in the FY 22. 21, pardon me. And a lot of that had to do with a lot of the stuff that was going on, and we're working on an argument with that with the state, and I think we'll be fine, but you know, it's just the overall concern that you can't just reduce your budget, your local budget, and rely on the grants to
No, but
support.
we're talking about supplementing budget. That's what we're talking about, supplementing.
The title is very complicated, Jim.
No, I know.
You know, and as Andy said, it's a formula, and plus there are other things you spend grant money on, and then kind of what's left in Title I gets allocated based on a formula to all the schools in the district based on the poverty levels. And you know, it's a calculation, and you shouldn't be worrying about it right now, is what Andy is saying. I mean, you're gonna get Title I assistance because our districts and our schools are school-wide programs. You're gonna get whatever we get.
And it's nice to know what we are getting, just so that we know.
But you don't know
what's
yet,
there, and
because-
we're sure whether we will absolutely get the same amount next year.
Exactly.
We have
Don't
no
know.
idea until
You
Nice
don't
to
know what
know
you're
what we
getting.
got.
around May. We won't know until around May what that final number is. And so we can project that we're going to, you know, put 2 folks at the middle school, I'm just using that as an example. And the calculations may come back and we can only fund 1.6. Well, there's an issue there is because if we offer, by the time we find that out, we've offered a person a contract. And we can no longer say this is contingent on grant funding. And so therefore, now we get into the collective bargaining agreement and some other things like that. So we are trying to project those numbers out and be as thoughtful as possible.
That's all we're really looking
Yeah.
for. Absolutely.
And I think from my perspective, we're aiming to maintain what Title has paid for this year. Because the funding from Title has increasingly decreased over the last 4 years at least, to the tune of like $500,000 over time. So we're aiming to hold steady on what we are currently funding for Title.
But that's not ESSER.
No,
So I want to be like, because the term interventionist got like
Yeah.
really mingled. And so we are looking to maintain what we funded through Title, knowing that we've lost, as Deb said, like $500,000 over 4 years in Title. So we're projecting that number to continue to keep going down. But I think we're looking at, you know, if there's a grant out there that we can go after, we're actively pursuing it, to try and see if we can find other ways to, support, because title alone is not going to meet the needs of all of our students.
Can I just ask one budget question? And I apologize if I missed last meeting and you probably discussed this, but
That's okay.
the regular ed paras are up. No, maybe they're.
We had 1,504.
They're up a bit.
We had 1,504.
They're up a lot. We went from one.
You're not in this book, you're on a different book.
Yeah, I'm on the handout from last time, but.
No, but Chris, you're absolutely right. There was, in the budget that Jim passed out, there are 5 paras at the middle school. And last year we budgeted one.
Have something more too.
But I think we've done some.
One of the paras,
So that number, 100%.
one of the 5 was somebody that came from Saxon's River. Must have been one of the 504 children.
Well, we need to update that,
But
I think it is still up, but.
Yeah, we had 1,504
So
at the
obviously-
elementary and 4 at the.
what those
middle
paras are
school.
doing or whatever is a critical item on your increase.
I'm not gonna delve into. That one's gonna jump out.
Is what we were
Yeah.
given.
Well, there, in the budget that Jim passed out today, there are 5 paras at the middle
At the
school.
middle school.
And last year we budgeted 1.
Yeah, we had 4. Henry listed 4 last time with 2.
And are these,
And 1 came
are
from
these
Saxon's River.
serving 504 students?
So one that came from, Laura, I'm waiting for Laura to speak up. I think you've had 3 504 paras.
Correct, yeah,
And one of them has moved to the middle school
will be,
for next year.
correct.
Yeah, so that brought the middle school's number up to 5 paras. We know what one of them is the 504 kid from Saxon's River that's moved up. But we don't know what the other 4 are.
So I think that there's, again, some coding in the proposed budget. I want to separate these 2 out. Currently, and I'd have to go back and look, so I don't want to, Rockingham isn't paying for all those paras. Some of them could be paid out of ESSER funds. And so for this current year, they might be in a proposed budget for the future. But I'd have to go back and dive into that specifically. But there have been some needs of students based on a 504 or something that says that the student needs to have that.
And that's
piece.
what we
So,
need to find out.
Yeah. So.
Well, I'm perfectly willing to support paras for 504 kids. I'm less enthusiastic about supporting general ed paras.
And I don't, we're not using them in that. Because I agree with you on that. Teachers.
Any other questions on budget for tonight? The next meeting will be mainly budget.
They will go school by school.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that leaves us with the personnel matter for executive session.
Presumably this is an executive session, so move the board go into executive session
You got a copy of what you sent out?
to discuss the matter, premature knowledge of which
Yeah, I was
would
trying to find it.
disadvantage the board or the person. And to invite, do we invite middle school administration? Middle school administration and the superintendent.
Okay, do we have a motion to enter into executive session for a personnel matter where premature knowledge may disadvantage the person or the board and invite the administration.
This meeting was recorded by Falls Area Community Television, located at 1 Hospital Court, Bellows Falls, Vermont. If you would like a copy of the meeting, our phone number is 802-463-1613, or email us at fact810@gmail.com. Falls Area Community TV, keeping government honest.